first thing I noticed about the house was that it looked like it had been waiting. Not just empty. Waiting. It stood alone past a narrow strip of road that cut through the forest and then gave up, swallowed by snow. The car's headlights swept across the facade, peeling paint, crooked porch, dark windows, and for a moment it looked less like a building and more like a face. The porch was the mouth, sunk in a tired line. The windows were eyes, catching the light and then going black again. No other houses, no other lights, just the car cooling behind us and the forest watching from all sides. Perfect, Kirill said, slamming the trunk shut. Tell me this doesn't look like peak winter aesthetic. He was smiling, his breath fogging the air, the red of his scarf too bright against the gray of the house. Behind him, his sister Masha wrapped her coat tighter and tilted her head, staring. It looks abandoned, she said. I like it. Lena slipped her gloved hand into mine and squeezed. Her grip was warm and tense. You're sure this is the right address? She asked quietly. Yeah. I pulled my phone out, though the cold made it clumsy in my fingers. My booking app still showed the same pin dropped exactly here. Old countryside house, fireplace, fully furnished. Owner says key is in the mailbox. It's fine, Len. It's just old. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the dark windows, as if something might move behind them if she looked away. We crunched up the snow-covered steps, each plank groaning under our boots. The sound was too loud in the silence. The forest swallowed noise. It didn't echo, just absorbed it. The key was in the mailbox, exactly where the owner said it would be. Cold metal, slightly sticky where rust had bitten into it. I fit it into the lock, turned. For a moment it resisted, then clicked with a dull metallic sigh. The door opened a few centimeters on its own, as if the house exhaled and relaxed. A smell rolled out. Dust, old wood, stale air, and something faintly sweet beneath it, like oranges left too long on a table. Kirill pushed the door wider and stepped in with the kind of fake confidence you put on when you're being watched. Home for the night, he said. Let's see if it murders us before midnight or after. Masha laughed softly. Lena did not. I followed them in. The entrance hall was narrow, lined with dark wooden paneling that drank in the light from our phones. The ceiling was low enough that I instinctively lowered my head. To the left was a doorway to what looked like a living room. To the right, a short corridor toward what I guessed was the kitchen. At the end, a set of steep wooden stairs spiraled up into deeper shadow. Lights, Lena said again, more to herself than to me. I found a switch by the door and flipped it. Then again. Nothing. Great, I muttered. Maybe the owner forgot to tell you the part where we're supposed to live like it's 1950, Kirill said, already wandering toward the right. I'll check the fuse box later. There's probably a main switch somewhere. Can we at least? Lena began, but Masha had already turned left into the living room. Guys, she called. You need to see this. There was something in her tone that pressed under my ribs like a thumb. We followed. The living room was wrong. It wasn't the dust or the old furniture. It was the way everything was arranged. A long, heavy table sat in the center of the room, draped in a tablecloth that had once been white and was now the color of old bones. On it lay 4 plates, one on each side, all perfectly aligned. Glasses stood above them, turned upright, catching the beams of our flashlights with dull reflections. Cutlery rested beside each plate, exactly parallel. A thick layer of dust covered everything. You could see the path of Masha's finger when she reached out and drew a line across one of the plates. The streaked surface underneath was still intact, untouched by time. They left it set, she whispered, like they were about to have dinner. Lena stepped closer to me until her arm was pressed against mine. In the far corner of the room stood a Christmas tree. A real one, or what was left of it, tall, brittle, and bare in patches where the needles had fallen away. The remaining needles were dull and hard, more like wires than anything living. The ornaments were old-fashioned glass balls with cracked paint, paper angels curled at the edges, strings of tinsel hanging limp. The tree should have smelled like pine and resin. It smelled like dust and something faint and sour, like candle smoke trapped in fabric. The worst part was the feeling that someone had just walked away from this room. Not years ago. Minutes. Maybe the owner keeps it like this for the aesthetic? Kirill said, but his voice had lost most of its humor. Aesthetic. Lena snapped. It looks like someone died here mid-toast. Masha's flashlight moved slowly, tracing over the table, the chairs, the cracked photograph frames on the wall. It slid over the back of a larger, heavier chair at the far end of the table. Wait, she said. Come here. Unlike the others, this chair had a high back, the wood carved with swirls and leaves. There was no dust on the seat. No dust on the arms where hands would rest. It looked used. Masha leaned closer and shone her light at the top of the backrest. Numbers were carved there. Deep, splintered grooves gouged into the wood. December 31st, 19. Beneath it, in smaller, jagged letters, like someone had scratched them in a hurry with whatever they could find. He will come. The air seemed to thicken slowly around us. Okay, Lena whispered. I hate this. I hate this. Kirill cleared his throat, too loudly. Someone's idea of a joke, maybe, he said. Like a creepy rental theme thing. Stay in the haunted New Year house, drink champagne, pretend the furniture wants you dead. People pay for this stuff. No one paid for this, Lena said. She was right. The place had been cheap. Suspiciously cheap for New Year's Eve. I tore my eyes away from the carved words. Something about looking at them too long made my chest feel tight. Let's check the kitchen, I said. We'll figure out the lights first. Then we decide if we're staying. No point freezing outside if it's just a stupid prank. We left the living room. As soon as we stepped into the hallway, the sound changed. In the living room, our footsteps had echoed faintly. Out here, it was like walking inside a throat. No echo, just soft, closed in with swallowing every noise. The kitchen was better. Sort of. It was still old, still cold, but at least it looked like it had been part of an actual life at some point and not a photograph someone forgot to take down. Wooden cabinets, a sink under a small window, an old gas stove. A white fridge hummed in the corner, the only thing that sounded remotely alive. At least this works, Kirill said, patting the fridge like it was a dog. See? Functional. We're good. Lena opened a cabinet, then another, maybe just to hear something move. We unpacked our bags. Food, bottles, snacks, useless decorations we suddenly didn't feel like hanging. The normality of stacking plastic containers and arranging cheap champagne on the counter held us together for a while. Kirill bundled up and went outside to look for a meter or a main switch. The door closed behind him with a muffled thud that felt too final. I moved to the small kitchen window. The glass was cold under my fingers as I pushed aside the lace curtain. The forest outside was already dark, the sky a deep blue sinking toward black. Snow lay on the ground undisturbed, no other tracks except the ones we had made. Behind me, Lena opened drawers and Masha checked the cupboards for glasses. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Then something clicked in the distance. A very distinct, sharp, mechanical sound, somewhere inside the house. Not a floorboard, not settling wood. A switch. Lena straightened. Did you hear that? I turned from the window. Hear what? That. She pointed vaguely toward the hallway. Like something turned on. Before I could answer, warm light spilled into the corridor. It wasn't harsh or fluorescent. It was soft, golden, the way light looks through curtains. It seeped under the kitchen doorway, moving like a slow tide. We looked at each other. Kirill, I called. No answer. Masha stepped toward the doorway, her eyes wide and bright. That's from the living room. Lena's hand found mine again. Her palm was damp despite the cold. Don't, she whispered. Just wait for him. We didn't have to wait long. The front door opened again a moment later and Kirill stamped snow off his boots in the hall. Power's dead out there, he said, walking toward the kitchen. The main line is. He stopped when he saw the light. We all stared toward the hallway where the living room door stood slightly ajar, light pushing through the gap. You found a generator? I asked. He shook his head slowly. There's nothing. The meter is dead. The cables are rotten. This place doesn't have electricity. At all. The kitchen suddenly felt much smaller. The only sound was the quiet hum of the fridge and the soft, almost inaudible whisper of music from the living room. Music. We turned, listening more carefully. Faint, warped by distance and walls, there was a melody. An old one. Strings, a choir, something festive. It sounded like the background music from a New Year's show, the kind that plays while people clink glasses and smile at the camera. Okay, Kirill said, forcing a laugh that didn't quite come out right. That's weird, but I'm not staying in here wondering. Let's see what's going on. No, Lena said immediately. No, Kirill, don't. But he was already walking toward the living room. Masha followed without hesitation. I hesitated, Lena's fear spilling over into me like cold water, then followed too. Being alone in the kitchen felt worse. We moved in a line. Kirill first, then Masha, then me with Lena's hand locked around my wrist. The living room glowed. Every candle we had seen before was now lit. On the table, on the shelves, in small holders along the windowsill. On the tree, tiny flames perched dangerously close to dry needles. They burned with a steady, unnaturally calm flame. No draft touched them. No flicker, no dance. Just perfect little still tongues of fire. The music was louder here, spilling from a small, old-fashioned radio on the sideboard near the wall. Its plastic case was yellowed, the metal dial slightly rusted. The cord hung loose, unplugged. But the radio was on. The song was distorted by static, but cheerful. People laughed faintly in the background. Somewhere, a host's voice rose and fell, saying something about the coming year. My scalp prickled. Kirill moved toward the radio and held his hand over the dial, not quite touching. See? There must be. He stopped. The dial turned a fraction to the left by itself. The station crackled, shifted, settled back into the same song. None of us spoke. We're leaving, Lena said, her voice small and flat. Hold on, Kirill said, though there was no conviction left in him now. It's old tech. Could be interference. Could be. Could be what? She snapped. A ghost with good taste in retro music? Masha's gaze drifted to the table. Her breathing had changed. Slower. Focused. Look, she whispered. Each of the 4 plates had something on it now. When we first arrived, they had been empty. Now, at the edge of each plate, there was a small folded card. For place cards. My throat went dry. I moved closer and picked up the one nearest to me. My name was written on it in neat, old-fashioned script. Evan. The letters weren't printed. They were written in ink that had feathered slightly into the card fibers. Guys, Masha said. Mine has my name. She held up her card. Masha. Next to it, Lena's card. Lena. And Kirill's. Kirill. The chair at the head of the table had no card. It didn't need one. He will come. Put those back, Lena said suddenly, her voice shaking. Put all of it back. Don't touch anything. We're not staying. We're not doing this. She grabbed my card from my hand and dropped it on the plate, as if even holding it burned. I realized I was listening for footsteps on the stairs or in the hall, listening for a car pulling up outside. Anything that would make this normal. The house was completely, utterly still, except for the music, except for the candles, except for the 5th chair that creaked softly, like something had just shifted its weight on it. Enough, I said. The sound of my own voice surprised me. We pack. We get in the car. If the road is bad, we drive slowly. We can sleep at a gas station if we have to. We're not staying. Kirill glanced at the tree, at the table, at the chair at the far end. Something stubborn in his jaw loosened. Yeah, he said. Okay, yeah. We started backing out of the room. As soon as we stepped past the door frame, the radio crackled. The song cut abruptly. The sound fizzed into harsh static, then into something like a voice lost in the noise, shouting a word I couldn't catch. The candles didn't move. The 5th chair creaked again. We pulled the door nearly shut. Nearly. We didn't quite dare close it all the way. In the kitchen, the air felt thinner, easier to breathe, but it still carried the smell of hot wax and something else under it. Something like burnt meat that had long since cooled and sunk into wood. We threw our bags back onto the table. Lena started shoving things inside without looking at what she was grabbing. Her fingers shook. A plastic container hit the floor and cracked. Potato salad splattered across the tiles. "We have food at home," she said. "We don't need this. We don't need any of this." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. For a second the screen glitched, the numbers on the clock smearing into unreadable shapes before snapping into place. 23:07. The battery icon dropped from 60% to 20 in one blink. I stared at it. "Signal?" Kirill asked, already digging for his own phone. "1 bar," I said. "Maybe 2. It's enough." I opened the ride app, fingers numb. The loading circle spun, and spun, and spun. Then the app froze. The screen went black and came back with a system error. "Network issue," I said. My voice sounded wrong to my own ears. Lena's phone did the same. Masha's refused to turn on at all. Kirill's restarted twice in his hand. Deep inside the house, something softly shifted. A slow, dragging sound, like fabric across wood. "We're not staying here until midnight," Lena said. "I won't. I don't care if we walk to the road. I don't care if we freeze." "We won't walk," Kirill said, though he didn't sound sure. "Maybe the road's still clear enough. We got in, we can get out." He grabbed his keys. We moved together toward the front door. The handle turned easily. The door opened. Cold air slapped our faces. For a second, relief flooded me so suddenly my knees felt weak. Then I saw the car. It sat where we left it, but the tires were sunk deep into the snow as if they'd been there for weeks. Snow had drifted up around the doors and half covered the hood. The windshield was a white slab. It hadn't been snowing that heavily. Not enough for this. My mind tried to rationalize the wind, the angle, maybe. Then I saw the tracks. Or rather, the lack of them. Our footprints in the snow, which had been so clear when we arrived, were gone. No depressions. No marks. The snow lay untouched between the door and the car. As if we had never walked it. As if the house were the only real place, and everything beyond the porch was painted on. The forest. The trees. The road. Flat. White. Untouched. "Do you see that?" Masha whispered. "Get inside," Lena said. Her voice was thin with panic, but it still had that note of command. "Close it. Close it." We shut the door. Felt like closing a lid. No one spoke for a while. The radio in the living room turned itself on again. The music returned, louder this time. Laughter. Clinking glasses. A countdown in a voice that sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. We went back to the kitchen because there was nowhere else to go. The clock on the stove was blank. The microwave display was off. The fridge still hummed, but quieter. Like it didn't want to be noticed. 23:26. The numbers on my phone were steady now, but there was a weight behind them. Each minute felt like something moving closer. "We just need to make it to morning," Kirill said. His hands lay flat on the table, knuckles drum tight. "Whatever this is, it started at night. Maybe it stops when it's light. Old stories, old ghosts, old schedules. Morning comes, we leave. And until then?" Lena asked. His jaw clenched. "We stay away from that room," he said. "We don't sit down. We don't touch anything. We don't answer knocks. We don't listen if it talks. We wait." Masha let out a short, humorless laugh. "Don't answer knocks," she repeated. "That's so specific, I kind of hate it." We tried to talk about other things. Work, friends, stupid memories from university. But every conversation died halfway, crushed under the sense of something listening. The walls were too close, the ceiling too low. Every creak sounded deliberate. At 23:40, the kitchen light flickered on. There was no bulb in the ceiling socket. We all looked up at the blank porcelain fitting glowing with a soft, sickly light that had no source. The fridge went quiet. The hum died as if someone had pulled the plug. The radio in the other room changed stations again, cycling through static, fragments of voices, snatches of music, until it settled on a different New Year's program. The host's voice sounded farther away now, like he was speaking with cotton in his mouth. Footsteps started in the hallway. Slow. Even. One board. Then the next. Then the next. Back and forth. Back and forth. Pacing. They stopped outside the kitchen door. The handle did not move. For a moment, there was only the sound of breathing. Not heavy panting, not monstrous. Normal. Adult. Calm. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. My skin crawled. Then 3 soft knocks. Polite. Precise. Knuckles on wood. None of us moved. 3 more knocks, slightly harder. Lena's lips parted. No sound came out. The breathing on the other side of the door shifted. Closer. I could picture someone standing there with their hand on the doorframe, head tilted, listening to our silence like we were being rude. The handle twitched. Not enough to turn. Just a small testing movement, the way you might check if a door was locked without really meaning to come in. I realized my hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard my fingers hurt. The knocks didn't come again. The footsteps turned away, walking slowly toward the living room. The music swelled to meet them. 23:47. My heart hammered at the thought that we still had more than 10 minutes until midnight. 10 minutes felt like hours stretched and pulled. Time developed weight. "We can go upstairs," Masha whispered. "We could lock ourselves in one of the bedrooms. The stairs are right next to the living room," I said. I could hear the fear in my own voice and hated it. "You'll have to walk past the door. If it decides to open when you're there." I didn't finish. We stayed. The house settled into some kind of rhythm. Footsteps in the hall. Music changing stations, never fully clear. The soft hiss of candles burning without shortening. The occasional creak of the 5th chair. At 23:54, the kitchen window went black. I don't mean the sky darkened. I mean the glass itself went opaque in an instant, like someone had painted it from the outside with a single stroke. Lena stood and stepped toward it, slowly. "Don't," I said. She hesitated, then reached out anyway, fingers touching the glass. Her shoulders tensed. "It's warm," she whispered, "like someone is breathing on the other side." She backed away. 23:57. The music turned into a countdown. 3 minutes to midnight, a warped voice said. "Are you ready to welcome the new year with your loved ones? Gather around the table." Something walked past the kitchen door again. This time the shadow at the bottom of the door wasn't single. It stretched long, as if whoever cast it were taller than a normal person, or bent in a way that changed their shape. Silence pressed against the door. It had weight, depth. Then the living room door creaked all the way open. We didn't see it, but we heard it. The long, complaining groan of old hinges, the sudden lift in the music as if the room had been waiting for this. The smell of hot wax grew stronger. The breathing came back, now from farther away, moving through the house. I realized with a slow, icy clarity what frightened me most. Not that there was something in the house with us, but that it was calm. It wasn't rage, or hunger, or madness. Felt like ritual, like habit, like this had happened many, many times, and we were just fitting into an established pattern. 23:59. The radio crackled with applause. The voice shouted numbers, static chewing the edges. 10. We heard the word clearly through 2 walls. 9. Footsteps crossed the hall. 8. The 5th chair creaked as its weight shifted. 7. The candles hissed, a small wave of sound. 6. Breathing closer now. 5. The handle of the kitchen door turned. 4. All 4 of us lunged at the door at once. My palms slammed against the wood. Lena pressed her shoulder under my arm. Kirill grabbed the handle and held it down. Masha braced herself with her back. Something on the other side kept turning. Not fast, not struggling, steady, strong. 3. The pressure pushed the door inward. The wood bent slightly. The frame groaned. The thing on the other side didn't grunt, didn't gasp. It just kept pushing like it knew exactly how this would go because it had done it before. 2. A wave of heat rolled from the crack under the door, as if the hallway were full of open flames. The smell of smoke, of melted wax and something else, something sweet and rotten, flooded the room. 1. For a heartbeat, the pressure on the door surged. 0. The radio screamed. Not with a human voice. Not with joy. A burst of sound that was almost a laugh and almost a howl, shredded by static into something that made the hair rise on my arms. Then everything stopped. The pressure vanished. The handle went limp under Kirill's hand. The heat receded. The breathing cut off mid-inhale. The music died. The light in the kitchen socket extinguished. The house fell into a silence so complete I could hear blood in my ears. We stayed pressed against the door for a long time, too afraid to move, too afraid not to. Somewhere in the house, a single floorboard creaked, like a last small shift of weight. Then nothing. Minutes crawled by. My phone screen was dark. When I finally dared tap it, the time blinked into existence. 0:42. We had been standing there for more than 40 minutes. Outside, faint gray seeped into the edges of the sky. Morning creeping closer. We didn't sleep. We didn't open the door until the darkness leaking around the frame turned into the color of early dawn. When we finally did, slowly, inch by inch, the hallway was empty. The living room door was closed. We walked on legs that didn't fully feel like ours. The living room looked dead. No candles burned. The radio was off. The place cards on the plates were blank, as if the ink had sunk into them and disappeared. Dust lay in a fresh, thin layer over everything, even the tablecloth, as though years had passed in a handful of hours. The fifth chair was pushed back from the table, a fraction more than before. On the seat, there was a small, perfect circle of melted wax. In the center of it, a fingerprint, too large to be any of ours. We didn't speak. We didn't clean up. We grabbed our bags and walked out into a world that seemed suddenly flat and simple in comparison. The snow between the house and the car was disturbed again, our footprints exactly where they had been the first time, as if the night had been erased and replayed in some other space, not here. The car started on the first try. We drove in silence until the forest thinned and the first signs of the city began to push through the trees. It was only then, at a gas station with harsh fluorescent lights and the smell of burnt coffee, that I called the number of the owner. He answered on the second ring. "You left early," he said without greeting. His voice was tired, like this conversation had happened before. "There's something wrong with your house," I said. My throat was dry. "The power, the radio, the candles," he finished for me. "The table, the chair." My hand tightened around the phone. "You knew." A pause. "People don't usually stay," he said. "They book it for New Year's. They come, they see the inside, they feel it. Most of them leave before dark. You're the first ones who lasted until midnight in some time." He sounded neither impressed nor grateful, just resigned. "What is it?" I asked. "What happened there?" A soft exhale on the other end of the line. Not quite a sigh. "The house was built for a family of 5, he said. Mother, father, 3 children. Every year they celebrated at home. Big dinners. Neighbors over sometimes. Music. The father was strict about it. Everyone in their place. Everyone at the table. No one absent." He paused. "In 1979, there was a fire," he continued. "No one knows how it started. People say it began in the living room. It spread quickly, for bodies were found, burned. The father was never recovered. Maybe he died somewhere else. Maybe he got out. Maybe." He didn't finish that sentence. "The house kept standing," he said instead. "Blackened and empty. A few years later, someone bought it, fixed it up, tried to live there. It didn't go well. They sold. The next people rented it out for holidays. That didn't go well either." "What do you mean, didn't go well?" Lena asked, leaning closer so she could hear. "Arguments, accidents, people seeing things." The owner sounded distant, like he was reciting a list he'd heard too often. Sometimes guests said the chairs moved, that the radio turned on by itself, that someone knocked on the door at midnight, and if you didn't answer, you heard them sit down at the table anyway. My mouth felt full of dust. Why do you still rent it out? I asked. Another pause. He doesn't like it when it's empty, the owner said quietly. It's worse when no one's there at all. At least if someone comes, he has something, a chance, a family shape to fit around. Maybe one day he'll realize there's no one left to join him and stop. He cleared his throat. You didn't sit down, did you? He asked. At the table? I thought of the chairs, of our names on cards, of the weight against the door. No, I said. We never did. Good, he said. There was genuine relief in that single word. Don't go back, even if it's cheap, even if you think you imagined it. He hung up. For a long time, none of us spoke. Outside the gas station window, people carried plastic bags and hurried across the icy parking lot. Someone laughed. A child fussed. Life continued with its usual trivial noises. Kirill finally broke the silence. New plan, he said. Next New Year we do something normal. Crowded bar. Too much noise. Overpriced cocktails. No trees. No candles. No houses with feelings. Masha stared into her paper cup of coffee. He wanted us to sit with him, she said. He set the table. He wrote our names. He came to get us when we didn't come. Lena took my hand under the greasy laminated table. Let's just forget it, she said. But that night, when I closed my eyes, all I could see was the fifth chair. Empty. Waiting. And deep in the wood, under the carved date and the old scratches, I thought I could feel fresh grooves forming. A shape. The beginning of a letter. An E.